The neon sign of Murphy's all-night diner flickered its last goodbye as Lena pushed through the greasy door at 1:47 a.m. Her feet screamed in protest, 12 hours of carrying plates, forcing smiles, and dodging the grabby hands of drunk customers. November in Chicago didn't care about your exhaustion. The wind cut through her threadbare coat like a serrated knife. She counted the tips in her apron as she walked. $43. Barely enough to cover the electric bill, let alone the rent that was already 2 weeks late. Her landlord, Mr. Paul, had stopped making eye contact. Eviction wasn't a possibility anymore, it was a timeline. But Lena kept moving, kept surviving, because waiting for her in their cramped studio apartment was the only thing that mattered. Jasper. 4 years ago she'd been walking this same route home, drenched and defeated after another soul-crushing shift. The rain had turned the streets into black mirrors, reflecting a life she barely recognized as her own. That's when she heard it, a sound so faint she almost convinced herself it was the wind. A cry. Weak. Desperate. Human. She'd found him behind a rusted dumpster in the alley between 5th and Grant, wrapped in a thin hospital blanket that did nothing against the October cold. Days old, maybe a week at most. His tiny fists clenched against a world that had already abandoned him. His lips were blue. Lena didn't think. She didn't call the police first or worry about the right thing to do. She scooped him up, held him against her chest, and ran. She ran until her lungs burned, until she burst through her apartment door, until she'd warmed him with her own body heat and fed him with formula she bought with money meant for her own dinner. When the police finally came, they filed a report. Checked hospitals. Found nothing. No missing infant. No frantic parents. The baby was a ghost, unwanted, unclaimed, and invisible to a system that had no room for one more lost soul. So Lena made a decision that rewrote her entire existence. She kept him. Named him Jasper after her father. Registered him as her own through a lawyer. Became a mother in every way that mattered, even if the paperwork required some creative interpretation. Now Jasper was 4 years old, bright, curious, with a laugh that made even her darkest days bearable. He had her dark hair but the most unusual eyes she'd ever seen. A deep, stormy gray blue that seemed too old for his young face. Sometimes when he looked at her she felt like he was the one protecting her. Tonight, like every night, she walked through that same alley. Not because it was faster, it wasn't. But because it was the place where her real life began. Where the universe gave her a gift wrapped in desperation. She should have taken the long way around. The alley was darker than usual. One of the streetlights had finally given up, leaving pools of shadow between the buildings. Lena's breath created small clouds in the frigid air as she quickened her pace. She didn't hear them until they were already there. 3 shapes detached from the darkness near the construction scaffolding. Men, broad-shouldered, moving with the casual confidence of predators who'd done this before. Little late for a walk, isn't it? The voice was thick, amused. The speaker wore a bull's cap pulled low, his face half hidden. Lena's heart kicked into overdrive. Just heading home. Not looking for trouble. She tried to move past them, but they shifted, forming a wall of leather jackets and bad intentions. The one with the cap stepped closer. She could smell cigarettes and something sharper, whiskey, maybe vodka. Trouble's not what we're offering. He reached for her purse. Just hand it over and we'll let you go. Instinct took over. Lena jerked back, clutching her bag tighter. Please, I don't have anything. The second man, taller with a spiderweb tattoo creeping up his neck, grabbed her arm. His grip was iron. Don't make this difficult. He tried to resist. Because in that purse was everything. Her ID, the small amount of cash she'd managed to save, and most importantly, the photo of Jasper she carried everywhere. Proof that she existed for someone. Proof that she mattered. The bag ripped. Contents scattered across the wet pavement, receipts, chapstick, loose change. And the photograph, sliding into a puddle, Jasper's smiling face staring up at the cold sky. No. Lena lunged for it, but the third man, silent until now, shoved her hard. She fell, palms scraping against concrete, her head connecting with the brick wall with a sickening crack. Pain exploded behind her eyes. The world tilted, sounds becoming muffled and distant. Through blurring vision she saw the men laughing, saw one of them pick up her wallet. Jasper, she thought desperately. I have to get home to Jasper. But her body wasn't listening anymore. The edges of her vision darkened, narrowed to a pinpoint, and then, Nothing. Consciousness returned slowly, accompanied by the sound of an engine, powerful purring. Lena's head throbbed with each heartbeat, and when she tried to move, gentle hands stopped her. Don't. You hit your head pretty hard. The voice was male, deep, with an edge of barely restrained violence beneath its calm surface. She forced her eyes open. She was in a car, not just a car. A luxury vehicle with leather seats that probably cost more than she made in a year. The interior was dark except for the glow of the dashboard and the passing streetlights creating strobe effects through the windows. The man beside her was intimidating was too soft a word. He sat with the stillness of someone who never had to prove their power because everyone already knew it. Mid-30s, sharp jaw, dark hair swept back and eyes that looked black in the low light. He wore an expensive suit under an even more expensive coat, and his hands, resting on his knees, bore the scars of someone who'd done violence and survived. Who are you? Her voice came out as a croak. You were attacked, he said simply. I intervened. You fainted. I'm taking you somewhere safe. Panic spiked through the pain. No, I need to go home to my son. Your son is fine. I had my associate check on him. He's asleep. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chin, is watching over him. He's safe. The casual way he said it, the fact that he already knew about Jasper, knew about Mrs. Chin, should have terrified her. Instead, she felt a strange, disorienting relief. And then the implication hit her. You had someone watching my apartment. I had someone ensuring the child of the woman I just rescued wasn't in danger. There's a difference. His tone suggested he didn't explain himself often. Lena tried to piece together what happened. Those men are no longer a concern. The finality in his voice made her shiver. She studied him more carefully in the intermittent light. There was something almost familiar about him, though she was certain they'd never met. You don't forget a man like this. Where are we going? My office. You need medical attention and I have questions. Questions? About what? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out something small. When he handed it to her, her heart stopped. It was Jasper's photograph. The one that had fallen in the puddle. This man, had retrieved it. That's mine, she whispered, taking it with trembling fingers. I know. His eyes fixed on her face with uncomfortable intensity. Tell me about the boy. Something in his tone made her defensive. He's my son. That's all you need to know. Is he? The question hung in the air like a blade. Because I don't think he is. Not biologically, at least. Lena's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about. The car pulled to a stop in front of a towering building downtown. All glass and steel, the kind of place where decisions worth millions were made before breakfast. The driver, a massive man who moved like a trained soldier, opened the door. The dangerous man gestured for her to follow. His office occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering sprawl of Chicago, making Lena feel like she was floating above the city. The decor was minimalist. Dark wood, leather, chrome, expensive without being ostentatious. This was a room where power was wielded quietly. He guided her to a leather sofa near the windows. Sit. A doctor is on the way to check your head. I don't need a doctor. I need to get home to my son. He poured water from a crystal decanter, handed it to her. He sat across from her in a chair that might as well have been a throne. For a long moment he just studied her, not in the leering way of the men at the diner but with the intensity of someone solving a puzzle. Finally he spoke. My name is Damien Castellano. The name meant nothing to her but the way he said it suggested it should. She remained silent. 5 years ago, he continued, I was married. My wife, Isabella, was pregnant with our first child. A son. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We had enemies. I've always had enemies. One of them decided the best way to hurt me was to destroy my family. Lena's stomach twisted. She knew where this was going, could feel it in her bones. They planted a bomb in her car. She was driving to an appointment. His voice remained steady but his hands clenched into fists. The explosion was complete. By the time emergency services arrived, there was nothing left to identify. My wife died instantly. My infant son, who was supposed to be with her, disappeared. I'm sorry, Lena whispered, because what else could she say? Everyone assumed the baby died in the explosion. But there was no body. No remains. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because he wasn't in the car. My enemies had grabbed him first, planned to ransom him. But something went wrong. The operation fell apart. And in the chaos, a days-old infant was abandoned somewhere in this city. Lena's hands began to shake. The water glass trembled. 4 years ago, Damien continued, his dark eyes boring into hers, in an alley between 5th and Grant on a rainy October night. He paused. You found him. No. The word came out strangled. No, that's not, you can't know that. The photograph. He gestured to the picture still clutched in her hand. Look at it. He didn't want to. Already knew what she'd see. But she looked anyway. It's a rare genetic trait, Damien said quietly. My grandfather had those eyes. My father. Me. My son. His voice cracked on the last word. The exact shade of gray-blue. Like smoke over water. I'd know it anywhere. Lots of people have blue-gray eyes. Not like that. And not with the distinctive ring pattern around the pupil. A marker, passed down through 3 generations of Castellano men. He stood, walked to the window. When I saw that photograph in the alley tonight lying in the puddle next to your unconscious body, I thought I was hallucinating. Thought grief had finally broken me. But then I looked closer, saw the eyes, saw the age, did the math. Stop. Lena's voice was sharp. Just stop. You can't come into my life and claim. I'm not claiming anything. He turned back to her, and for the first time she saw past the intimidating exterior to the grief underneath. Not yet. But I need to know the truth. And so do you. Before she could respond, there was a quiet knock. A man entered, 50s, silver-haired, carrying a medical bag, and began examining her head, wound with professional efficiency. Mild concussion. Butterfly bandages. Rest and observation. Through it all, Damien remained by the window, a silhouette against the city lights, waiting. When the doctor left, the silence stretched unbearably. A DNA test, Damien finally said. That's all I'm asking. If I'm wrong, I'll disappear from your life. You'll never see me again. But if I'm right, his voice caught. If I'm right, then I've spent 4 years thinking my son was dead when he was alive. Being raised by a woman who found him in an alley and saved his life. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. And if he is yours? What then? You take him away from me? From the only mother he's ever known? No. The answer was immediate, fierce. Never. You raised him. Loved him. Kept him alive when my world tried to destroy him. But I need to know. He faltered, and she realized this dangerous, powerful man was close to breaking. I need to know if there's still a piece of her left in this world. If I failed them both, or if maybe, just maybe, I get a second chance. Lena looked down at the photograph in her hands. At Jasper's smiling face. At those unusual, beautiful eyes. And she thought about the question that had haunted her for 4 years. Who abandons a baby? What kind of person leaves an infant to die? Maybe the answer wasn't a person at all. Maybe it was circumstance. Tragedy. A bomb and chaos and desperate criminals fleeing a scene. Okay, she whispered. The test. But I'm there. Every step. Damien nodded once. Agreed. The DNA test happened in Damien's apartment. A penthouse that made his office look modest. A private physician arrived with all the necessary equipment, took samples with gentle efficiency, and promised results within 48 hours. 48 hours that felt like 48 years. Damien insisted Lena and Jasper stay at the penthouse for safety. The men who attacked you were hired, he explained, by enemies who've been circling for months. If they connect you to me, you're both in danger. Lena wanted to argue, to insist on her independence. But one look at Jasper, playing with toy cars on the expensive carpet, completely unaware of how his world was about to change, and she couldn't risk it. Those 2 days existed in a strange suspended reality. Damien was different than she expected. He didn't hover or demand answers. Instead, he kept a careful distance, watching Jasper with an expression that broke her heart. Longing. Fear. Hope. And Jasper, in the way children do, gravitated toward him. On the second evening, while Lena was making dinner in the massive kitchen, trying to feel useful, trying to maintain some normalcy, Jasper brought Damien a book. Read. the 4-year-old asked, holding up a picture book about dragons. Damien looked at the book like it might explode. Then slowly he took it, sat on the floor, this man in his $1,000 suit, and read to a child who might be his son. Lena watched from the doorway, tears streaming silently down her face. When Jasper fell asleep that night, curled up on the leather couch with his favorite blanket, Damien finally spoke. "Thank you." His voice was rough. "For raising him. For being there when I couldn't be." "You didn't know," Lena said quietly. "You thought he was dead. I should have looked harder. Should have considered." He stopped, jaw clenched. "I was so consumed by grief and rage that I didn't think clearly. I tore apart my enemies. Made them pay in blood. But I never looked for the one thing that mattered most. You're looking now. Maybe too late." "It's not about timing," Lena said, surprising herself with the certainty. "It's about what happens next." The doctor arrived at exactly 6 p.m. on the third day. Handed Damien a sealed envelope. Left without a word. Damien stood in the center of his living room, holding the envelope like it contained a bomb. His hands, steady when holding a gun, unshaking when making million-dollar deals, trembled. Lena waited on the couch, Jasper asleep upstairs, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. "I can't open it," Damien finally admitted. "Why not?" "Because if it's negative I lose him again. And if it's positive..." He met her eyes. "If it's positive, everything changes. For all of us." Lena stood, walked over, took the envelope from his hands. "Then let me." She tore it open before she could lose courage. Unfolded the single page. Found the relevant line among all the medical jargon. Probability of paternity. 99.97%. The paper slipped from her fingers, fluttered to the floor. A sound escaped her throat, half sob, half laugh. "He's yours," she whispered. "Jasper is your son." Damien didn't move. Didn't breathe. For 5 long seconds he stood frozen. Then slowly he sank into the nearest chair and buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. Lena had never seen a man like him cry. Didn't know they could. She knelt beside him, unsure whether to comfort him or give him space. "I found him," Damien finally choked out. "After 4 years I found him. He's alive. He's healthy. He looked up, his dark eyes wet. "He's perfect. And that's because of you." 2 weeks after the DNA results, life had settled into a new rhythm. Damien had moved them permanently into his penthouse, and Lena was slowly adjusting to a world of marble floors, armed security, and a kitchen bigger than her entire former apartment. That Tuesday afternoon, Jasper was napping in his new bedroom and Lena had wandered toward the kitchen to prepare his favorite snack for when he woke up. The penthouse was quiet, peaceful, and she was just reaching for the door when she heard a voice drifting from the hallway near Damien's study. Logan. Damien's right-hand man. The quiet one with kind eyes who'd been assigned to watch over her and Jasper. The man she'd started to trust. His voice was low, urgent, and something in his tone made her freeze. "Yeah, I'm telling you it's confirmed," Logan said clearly on a phone call. "Castellano found his son. The kid's been alive this whole time, 4 years old, living with some waitress who found him as a baby." Lena's blood turned to ice. She pressed herself against the kitchen wall, her heart hammering so loudly she was afraid he'd hear it. "No, listen to me, Ethan. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for," Logan continued, his voice taking on an excited edge. "Castellano's completely vulnerable now. He's obsessed with the kid, moved the woman and the boy into his penthouse. He's going soft, emotional. This is our window. We grab both of them, the woman and the kid. Use them as leverage. Castellano will sign over everything. The territories, the businesses, the accounts, to keep them safe. Once we have the signed documents, you take over the empire and I get my cut. Clean, simple, and Castellano ends up with nothing." Lena's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp of horror. "Tomorrow night," Logan said. "Castellano has that late meeting with the syndicate heads. He'll be distracted and security will be focused on him. That's when we move. I'll have someone disable the penthouse security system for exactly 12 minutes. Enough time to get in, grab them, and get out. I've been planning this for months. Every detail is covered. By Thursday morning, you'll control everything Castellano built and he'll be broken." Logan laughed, a cold, cruel sound that made Lena's skin crawl. Poetic justice, right? The great Damien Castellano, brought down by the son he thought was dead. Lena darted silently toward the pantry, slipping inside just as Logan walked past the kitchen, still talking on his phone as he headed toward the elevator. She waited until she heard the elevator doors close before emerging, her whole body shaking. Her mind raced. Tomorrow night. They were planning to kidnap her and Jasper, use them to destroy Damien. He had to tell him. No. Lena found Damien in his home office, reviewing contracts on his laptop. He looked up when she entered, and whatever he saw in her face made him immediately stand. What happened? His voice was sharp, alert. She closed the door, locked it, then turned to face him. Logan is a traitor. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Damien went very still, the kind of dangerous stillness that preceded violence. Explain. Everything. She told him word for word what she'd overheard. The phone call to Victor Ethan, the plan to kidnap her and Jasper, the scheme to force him to sign over his empire. As she spoke, she watched Damien's face transform. The warmth drained away, replaced by something cold and lethal. When she finished, silence filled the room. Damien's hands were clenched into fists so tight his knuckles had gone white. Logan, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. 7 years. I trusted him with everything. I'm sorry, Lena whispered. He looked at her and she saw murder in his eyes. He pulled out his phone. I need to make some calls. Wait. Lena grabbed his arm. We need to be smart about this. If Logan suspects we know, he could move up the timeline or disappear. We need proof. Evidence. We need to know everything about this plan. Damien stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly the rage crystallized into something more controlled. You're right. We need to know how deep this goes. He made a call, speaking quietly. Get me a secure line to Torres. And I need a full surveillance package. Discreet. Now. Within an hour, Damien's most trusted tech specialist, a woman named Sophia who operated independently from his regular security team, had arrived. She was efficient, professional, and asked no unnecessary questions. I need complete surveillance on Logan Kane, Damien said. Phone taps, message cloning, location tracking, financial records. Everything. And I need it done without him knowing. How long do I have? Sophia asked. We have less than 24 hours before he moves. I need everything you can get me by tomorrow afternoon. Sophia nodded. I'll need something of his. Phone, laptop, anything he's touched recently. His jacket, Lena said suddenly. He left his jacket in the hallway closet. He always does when he's here. Perfect. That'll have residual data from his devices. Sophia stood. I'll have preliminary results in 6 hours. The next 18 hours were the longest of Lena's life. Sophia worked from a secure location, feeding information to Damien in encrypted bursts. What they discovered was far worse than a simple betrayal. Logan had been communicating with Victor Ethan for nearly a year. The messages painted a picture of a man consumed by ambition and resentment, tired of being second in command to a man going soft. But it went deeper. At 3 a.m. Sophia called with something that made Damien's face go pale. You need to see this, she said. Damien put her on speaker so Lena could hear. I dug into Ethan's financial records following the money trail backward, Sophia explained. 5 years ago there was a series of payments, large ones, made to a demolitions expert named Vincent Krause. The same Vincent Krause who was arrested 2 years later for illegal explosives trafficking. Damien's breathing had gone shallow. Continue. The payments were made 2 weeks before the car bombing that killed Isabella Castellano. Sophia's voice was gentle but firm. I cross-referenced the payment dates with security footage from the time, phone records, everything I could find. Damien. Victor Ethan orchestrated the attack on your wife. He hired the people who planted that bomb. He's the one responsible for Isabella's death. The phone nearly slipped from Damien's hand. Lena caught it, watched as he sank into his chair, his face ashen. There's more, Sophia continued. The kidnapping of your infant son wasn't a separate operation. It was part of the same plan. Ethan wanted to take everything from you in one night. Your wife, your heir, your will to fight. But something went wrong with the kidnapping team. They panicked when the bomb went off earlier than planned, and they abandoned the baby rather than risk being caught with him. And Ethan has been circling ever since, waiting for another opportunity. When Logan approached him months ago with information about your operations, Ethan saw his second chance. And when Logan discovered Jasper was alive, Ethan saw poetic justice, using your son to finally destroy you. Damien stood abruptly, walked to his safe and pulled out a handgun. His movements were mechanical, controlled, deadly. Thank you, Sophia. Send me everything. He ended the call. Lena stepped in front of him. What are you doing? What I should have done 5 years ago. His voice was hollow, empty. He killed Isabella. The words exploded from him, raw and agonized. He took her from me, tried to take my son, and now he wants to take you both again. I'm not letting him walk away from this. Not this time. Then don't let him walk away, Lena said firmly. Put him in a cage for the rest of his life. Make him rot in prison knowing he failed. But don't do this. Don't become the thing Jasper should fear. He deserves to die. Maybe. Probably. But you don't deserve to be the one who carries that blood on your hands. Not anymore. She took the gun gently from his grip. You want justice for Isabella? For Jasper? Then let's do this the right way. The way that ensures Ethan and Logan never see freedom again. The way that protects our son from ever living in the shadow of revenge. Damien's eyes were wet. The system failed us before, then we make sure it doesn't fail us now. We have evidence. We have confessions recorded on Logan's phone. We have financial trails, testimony, everything we need to bury them both legally. She cupped his face. Trust me. Please. Let me help you do this right. For a long moment, Damien just stared at her. Then slowly he nodded. Okay, he whispered. Hey. We do it your way. They spent the rest of the morning coordinating with Sophia and Agent Morrison, the FBI agent who had worked with them during the Logan warehouse case months ago. Morrison listened to everything, reviewed the evidence and made a decision. This is enough for warrants, he said. For both Logan Kane and Victor Ethan. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping, extortion and, he paused, looking at Damien with something like sympathy. For Ethan, we can pursue murder charges for Isabella Castellano's death. The evidence linking him to the bombing is circumstantial but strong. Combined with everything else, we can make it stick. When do you move? Damien asked. Tonight. We let Logan think his plan is proceeding as scheduled. When he moves to disable your security system, we'll have agents in position. We'll catch him in the act and simultaneously raid Ethan's location. Morrison leaned forward. But I need your word, Castellano. You let us handle this. No vigilante justice. No interference. Damien's jaw clenched. Every instinct in him screamed to handle this himself, to make them pay personally. But then he felt Lena's hand slip into his, felt the weight of what he'd promised her. You have my word, he said finally. But I want to be there. When you arrest them, I want to see their faces. Morrison considered this. I can arrange for you to observe from a secure location. But you stay back and you let my team do their job. Agreed, he said. That evening, everything moved like a choreographed dance. Lena and Jasper were moved to a secure FBI safe house with round-the-clock protection. Damien, despite every protective instinct screaming at him to stay with them, went to the FBI mobile command center 2 blocks from his penthouse. Logan, believing his plan was proceeding perfectly, arrived at the penthouse at exactly 8:47 p.m. He used his security clearance to access the building, made his way to the penthouse level, and pulled out a small device to disable the alarm system. He never got the chance to use it. FBI. Hands in the air. Now. 6 agents swarmed from hidden positions. Logan's hand moved toward his concealed weapon, but he was on the ground with a knee in his back before he could draw it. Logan Kane, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, extortion, and aiding in the commission of murder. Damien watched it all on a monitor, his face impassive. But his hands were shaking. Simultaneously, across the city, another team of FBI agents raided Victor Ethan's estate. The crime boss was in his study, surrounded by documents and blueprints, evidence of his plan to take over Damien's territory. The raid was swift, professional, and complete. Ethan was arrested along with 4 of his top lieutenants. In the mobile command center, Morrison turned to Damien. It's done. Both of them are in custody. We're executing search warrants now, seizing all documents and evidence. Damien exhaled shakily. Can I see them? Which one? Both. I need to look them in the eye. Morrison hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. Under supervision. They brought Logan to an interrogation room first. When Damien entered, flanked by 2 agents, Logan looked up from his handcuffed position at the table. For a moment, something like shame flickered across his face. Then it hardened into defiance. You always were too soft, Damien, Logan said. Isabella made you weak. And now this woman and that kid have finished the job. You're not the man you used to be. You're right, Damien said quietly. I'm not. The man I used to be would have put a bullet in your head the moment I found out about your betrayal. The man I am now is giving you to the justice system. And you know what? That's not weakness. That's evolution. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Recorded phone calls, financial records, testimony from Sophia about the digital trail, forensic evidence linking Ethan to the original bombing, and Logan's attempt to disable security systems with federal agents watching. Logan took a plea deal in exchange for his testimony against Ethan. He received 30 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. Victor Ethan went to trial and was convicted on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder in the death of Isabella Castellano, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, extortion, and racketeering. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who had seen too many victims of organized crime, showed no mercy. Damien sat in the courtroom gallery, Lena beside him holding his hand. When the sentence was read, he felt something break inside him, not in a painful way but like chains falling away. The weight he'd carried for 5 years, the grief, the guilt, the rage, began to lift. Justice had been served. Not with bullets but with law. Not with revenge but with accountability. The months following the trial were a time of profound transformation. With Logan and Ethan behind bars and the threat permanently neutralized, Damien completed his transition out of the criminal world. The last of his underground operations were shut down or turned over to authorities. What remained was a legitimate business empire: real estate, investments, and charitable foundations. He and Lena were married in a small ceremony in their backyard, with Jasper as the ring bearer, taking his job so seriously that he practiced walking down the makeshift aisle 17 times before the actual event. When the officiant asked who gave Lena to be married, Jasper piped up, "I do. Because she's my mom and Daddy loves her and we're a family." There wasn't a dry eye in the small gathering. They moved to a beautiful Victorian house in Oak Park, big enough for the family they were building, with a yard where Jasper could play, and far enough from the city to feel like a fresh start. Thank you for watching this story. Please subscribe and rate this story from 1 to 10 in the comments.